Hello America, this is Call of Duty Goddess. Today is April 21st, 2016. I have a few articles here from Judicial Watch about some documents received and stuff, and I just want to go over a few things, especially ones that I have researched in the past, namely this one about Benghazi and Hillary Clinton, titled State Department Belatedly Releases New Clinton Benghazi Documents, and this was dated April 14th, 2016, and it's basically about how Hillary Clinton was talking to dignitaries and her daughter about the September 11, 2012 attack on the Benghazi consulate was not due to a video. And, how they have the documents, and you can click on this hyperlink. I'll, of course, leave the link below, and you can check out the documents for yourself if you'd like. But it says, interestingly, down at the bottom here, there were two scandals. First, Hillary Clinton was telling different stories to foreign leaders about the Benghazi attack, including an admission that it was a terrorist attack. The second is the State Department's cover-up of these documents. Well, I would say that there are a couple more, namely the February 17th Brigade, which is the ones that did the attack. Now, the February 17th Brigade was basically a militia group, and they were the ones in charge of guarding the compound. The attack was done by them, and that is on this and many other ones. This is by The Guardian, titled U.S. Consulate Attack in Benghazi, a Challenge to Official Version of Events, and it's dated September 2013. But the interesting fact is you'll find here and there some articles reference the February 17th Mortars Brigade. And they were for the armed protection, and they are the ones that carried out the attack. Very interesting. Okay, I'll leave the link for this. I did a video titled What You're Not Supposed to Know About Benghazi, and actually this was a video that it described Operation Zero Footprint and how Congress did decide to arm the rebels via the UAE, and I believe it was Saudi Arabia. And you can watch that video. I'll leave the link for this below as well. But this is a very tangled web, and especially when you look at the February 17th Martyrs Brigade, they were the ones in charge of guarding the compound, and that's pretty damning. When we hire people to guard our compound that are militants, that are Islamic jihadis, and they then attack Chris Stevens and kill a couple other wonderful Americans. So let's move on to the next one here from Judicial Watch. U.S. gives 680,000 green cards to migrants from Muslim nations. Now it says in here that we have been bringing in migrants from 2009 to 2013 from 49 Muslim nations. Over the same period, the U.S. issued only 270,000 green cards to migrants from European Union, according to a committee announcement that reminds us a green card entitles recipients to access federal benefits, lifetime residency, work authorization, and a direct route to becoming a U.S. citizen. Well, just so happens that I did a video on The Refugee Surge Has Begun, it was titled, and that documents how if you are called a refugee, if you are titled as a refugee, you receive all those benefits as soon as you touch foot in the United States of America, and you can become a resident within a year. You can join the military immediately. Hello, Nadal Hassan, does that ring a bell with you? The guy that shot up the compound there, that was supposed to be a psychiatrist or a counselor? Anyway, let's move on. The DHS stats include a breakdown of the countries where the migrants came from. Pakistan and Iraq sent over the most, with 83,000 apiece, and Bangladesh had 75,000. 73,000 came from Iran, 45,000 from Egypt, 31,000 from Somalia, 24,000 from Uzbekistan. Turkey and Morocco had 22,000 each. Jordan and Albania 20,000 each, and Lebanon and Yemen each had 16,000. Rounding out the five-digit club as Indonesia, Syria, and Sudan. That's from 13 to 15,000. Afghanistan 11,000. Sierra Leone 10,000. The rest including Saudi Arabia, Algeria, Kosovo, and Libya only sent over a few thousand during the 5-year period covered by the DHS data. By contrast, only 65,000 green cards were granted to migrants from the European Union country, the United Kingdom, and the highest number during this period. The Senate committee reveals that DHS has not yet published statistics covering fiscal year 2014 and fiscal year 2015. And we'll be on the lookout for that. And when they do come out, are they really going to tell the truth? I'm thinking no. I remember seeing videos of people showing busloads of Homeland Security or FEMA buses filled with migrants, or refugees. Probably more like refugees, because even if they're migrants, they're giving green cards. So either way, they all get the same benefits, and that's food, housing, jobs, immediately, and to join the military immediately. So let's move on to the next one. Obama allots 19 million to register immigrant voters. That's dated April 18, 2016. A year after President Obama launched his task force on new Americans, the administration is injecting it with a $19 million infusion so it can achieve its key initiative of registering new voters that will likely support Democrats in the upcoming election. Funny thing, well, not so funny, I just did an interview with our famous John Smith and Vicki Davis, where Vicki Davis discusses this and discusses how they've been doing this for a very long time, and that's bringing in immigrants to get them to vote. Now, it is written in stone that they can vote as soon as they get in here. And just as disturbing and important, Judicial Watch wrote about the new task force last April, reporting that its chair is none other than Selena Munoz, sorry if I hatchet that name, the former vice president of the powerful Open Borders group, National Council of La Raza. If you've ever heard of La Raza, that's a pretty communist and militant group. So pretty frightening. Of course, if you know about Van Jones and people like that Obama has put in his administration. And if you've watched the Obama administration, well then that does not surprise you one little bit. And lastly, but certainly not least, in this little corruption profile here, Obama IRS corruption update dated April 15, 2016. This includes the Allied Educational Foundation to Supreme Court protect the laws that keep public officials honest, defending the First Amendment rights against the Obama IRS. Only 3 U.S. airports require employee security checks. Let's go over this. This first one is about former Governor Bob McDonnell, and he was found guilty by a jury of 11 counts of corruption and fraud. Now, isn't it odd that just before this corruption stuff began with McDonnell, and I am certainly not saying that he's not guilty, but it proves the point that we've all been thinking for a very long time. Governor Bob McDonnell objected to and decided to make it so Virginia was, I believe, the first state to bring the Obama administration to court about the Obamacare Act. And there were many other things that Bob McDonnell brought out against the Obama administration. Well, then all of a sudden he gets charged with 11 counts of corruption and fraud. Now, I believe that that is absolutely true, what he did. I believe that each and every one of these politicians are corrupt. That's why they have to toe the line. When they don't toe the line, guess what? They get outed. So that's how our corrupt government is controlling all of our politicians, because they're all corrupt and they'll threaten them. Anyway, in September 2014, McDonald was convicted for granting public favors to a Richmond businessman in exchange for golf outings, lavish vacations, and $120,000 in loans. In July 2015, the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit unanimously rejected McDonald's appeal. In January 2016, the Supreme Court agreed to review the lower court's decision. McDonald alleges that the federal statutes penalizing bribery and extortion are impermissibly vague under the U.S. Constitution. Really? In the Judicial Watch brief in support of the Court of Appeals decision, we and AEF argue that the two laws that issue are straightforward tools for policing public corruption. Public officials have a duty to act in the best interest of the people who elect them. When they make decisions based on personal interest, they are defrauding the public. The Honest Services Statute criminalizes government corruption by punishing those who execute a scheme to deprive another of the right to honest services. The Hobbs Act prohibits extortion under the color of official right. Petitioner was convicted of violating these statutes when he accepted more than $175,000 in personal benefits, loans, and luxury items in exchange for agreeing to use the power of his office on behalf of his benefactor. In considering whether the actions taken by a petitioner constituted official acts, Amici, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, argue the court to adopt as broad as possible interpretation. The Honest Services Statute and the Hobbs Act have served as critical tools in prosecuting public corruption. The court should adopt a broad interpretation of what constitutes an official act as not to deprive prosecutors of these critical tools. The Amici brief suggests that curtailing or scrapping these statutes would guarantee that more corrupt politicians and bureaucrats would escape prosecution, and that public corruption prosecutions already have dropped dramatically under the Obama administration. You don't say. Their brief highlights how hundreds of public officials have been successfully prosecuted for depriving the public of honest services and violating the Hobbs Act. And they have a list with a hyperlink there. It's no surprise that criminal politicians don't like federal corruption laws, but that doesn't make those laws unconstitutional. Under the Obama administration, there's been a remarkable drop in government corruption prosecutions. Eviscerating anti-corruption laws is the last thing that this nation needs, as public corruption is already out of control. And we move on down to defending the First Amendment rights against the Obama IRS. It seems these days that our core freedoms are protected under the U.S. Constitution are under attack from every direction. We have been particularly concerned for some about the IRS intentions toward freedom of expression in churches. Well, I have to say, if churches did not file for a 501c3 status, they would not have that problem, because as soon as a church or any other organization files for a 501c3 status, they are literally signing a deal with the devil. The 501c3 status says that they can control what you say inside of your doors. So that's just my opinion, and if you have a different one, please comment below. This week, we join with our client, the Alliance Defending Freedom, in moving to compel a federal court to require the IRS to reveal how it determines when to initiate church investigations. We believe the agency has been stonewalling efforts to open its procedures to public scrutiny. Again, I believe this all traces back to the 501c3 status that churches file. Not all of them, but you may want to check into that. You'll get an eye-opener because you'll find that your church is also a corporation. Go to Dun & Bradstreet. Go to manta.com, manta.com. You'll be shocked. The IRS is not above the law, and Americans deserve to know the truth about the agency's secret deals with activists. ADF legal counsel Christina Halcomb said the IRS has a legal obligation to explain why it is hiding things. So let's move on to the next one. Only 3 U.S. airports require employee security checks. Less than a month after a news outfit reported that dozens of airport employees around the country have potential ties to terrorists, officials from the Department of Homeland Security admit that only 3 airports in the United States require workers to undergo security checks. The astounding admission, delivered this week before Congress, comes on the heels of a number of cases involving gun and drug smuggling schemes operated by airline employees at major airports, including those located in Atlanta, New York, and San Francisco. In all of the cases, airport workers used their security badges to access secured areas of the respective facilities without having to undergo any sort of check. As if this weren't bad enough, last month government records obtained by the media revealed that 73 employees at nearly 40 airports across the nation were flagged for ties to terror in a June 2015 report from the DHS Inspector General's office. The files identified 2 of them working at Logan International Airport in Boston, 4 at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, and 6 at Seattle-Tacoma International in Washington State. Here's the government's explanation for letting the potential terrorists slip by. The Transportation Security Administration, TSA, didn't have access to the terrorism-related database during the vetting process for those employees. Wow. Seriously? That's pretty crazy there. Now we learned that only 3 of the nation's 300 airports, Atlanta, Miami, and Orlando, require employees to undergo security checks before work, even though there's an epidemic of illicit activity among this demographic. The unbelievable stat was delivered to DHS officials testifying at a Senate Commerce Committee hearing this week. In the aftermath of the Belgium terrorist attack, the hearing was scheduled to address efforts in this country to prevent attacks on passenger and freight targets that could lead to mass casualties. The head of TSA, Robert Neffinger, told lawmakers that the agency has increased the inspection of employees 5-fold in the last 5 months, but admitted improvements must be made, and the nation's airports will provide a report by the end of the month assessing their vulnerabilities. In a 2015 report, the committee wrote that most airports can't afford daily employee screening, and if they could, it wouldn't do much good. That's because full screening wouldn't appreciably increase the overall system-wide protection, according to the committee's findings, and no single measure can provide broad spectrum protection against risk or adversaries. Furthermore, this group of aviation advisors concluded that daily screening of airport workers is incapable of determining a person's motivations, attitude, and capabilities to cause harm, among other limitations. Under that ridiculous argument, airport security would be eliminated altogether for everyone. Wow, that is crazy. Anyway, that's your little Judicial Watch update. This is Call of Duty Goddess signing off, and as always, I've got your 6.